Greetings, Andy here, and we've reached the finale, 23rd of December, and it's my number 1 and 2. And before I start, I'd just like to thank you all for being with me on this journey. It's proved to be a bit of a marathon every day for 3.5 weeks, and I know some of you have been on every one from the comments, and I thank you with all my heart, and equally if you've just dipped in and out as and when, that's fine, and again I thank you for keep coming back and listening to my ramblings. So let's get going with my number 2, and it is the magnificent album Javelin by Sufjan Stevens. Now this was released in October, so not that long ago, and I sort of discussed it in my roundup of October, and at that time I'd only really listened to it a couple of times, but I said at the time I thought it was sort of up there with, you know, what I considered to be his finest albums, Illinois and Carrie and Lowie, and now having heard it quite a few times more, I think it actually beats them, maybe just, but you know, it is, I think, his best album to date. You know, like those, it's very intimate. It really is intimate, this album. It's got that sort of slightly rustic folk sound. I mean, he's a magnificent acoustic guitar player. I mean, the album has, you know, it's meticulously crafted, shall we say, and he somehow sort of weaves his folk sound with sort of lush orchestrals and lovely vocals. So he's got some guest vocals in here, like Mitski, I think, is one. But there are, I can't even describe them as harmonies. They're more sort of like group vocals, you know, in the background. It's really very, very good. He's a brilliant songwriter. The lyrics are really poignant. So again, I think I said, you know, in October, I wasn't 100% sure what the theme was here, or if there was one, and I think there is now. This is definitely an album of loss and longing. And love and mortality, you know, and it's affected by a recent loss of his, I believe. I think his partner died, I don't know when, either earlier this year or last year. And you know, that sort of affected things, and he's sort of going, he's wondering, you know, what will he find love again, and sort of reflecting on some of the past. The lyrics are, you know, he's a magnificent storyteller. He draws you in, and he's very open and vulnerable. But at the same time, you know, some of the lyrics are quite cryptic. So it's not sort of, you know, he leaves you having to think about what he's saying. And he's very open and vulnerable in it. I personally think, you know, he is the master of the art of the singer-songwriter currently. You know, there's a long tradition. I'm not saying he's the best ever, but I think in the English-speaking world, he's probably the finest current singer-songwriter. So and the artwork's really good. You know, I suspect he's done all this himself. There's a booklet which I'll show you. There's lots of photo collages, and I think this guy here was his partner, and so I don't know. Anyway, the album is rather magnificent in what they call green smoke. So it's a sort of like bottle green, semi-transparent with darker green splurgy things. It's very nice. The inside has its lyrics, and it's a single LP, I should have said, and it's yet another with 5 tracks on each side. There's a real pattern here, as I mentioned before. You know, and he talks about will anybody ever love me again, you know. So, and the opening track is called Goodbye Evergreen, and I wonder whether Evergreen with this was, you know, is a reference to his dead partner. And it came with this, well, actually this version came with a bonus CD of a handful of unreleased tracks, which I put on my bonus CD pile to have a listen to and still haven't got round to. but it includes this really, really full, lots and lots of pages of collages and things, and I sort of flicked through that and thought, yeah, very nice, very arty. But then more recently I realised that it's got like 2 pages of sort of an autobiographical essay. To be frank, for me, it's a little bit rambling, and again, it's quite cryptic. So he's talking about first love, second love, third love, but without ever being very explicit about it. So it's just a magnificent album, and it is. Where are we? It is Javelin, and it's Sufjan Stevens, and it's my number 2, which leads us to my number 1. And probably no surprises here. I've got my Porcupine Tree t-shirt on. It isn't Porcupine Tree, but it is Stephen Wilson and his magnificent Harmony Codex. This was released in September. Wilson himself has said that this isn't a specific genre. So, he admits that his previous album, what was it called, Future Bites, was his pop album. And to be frank, I actually quite liked it, but then neither of it was right up in my top list of that year. I know a lot of people who really didn't like it because it was too poppy. And he talks about, he admits also that The Raven That Refused to Sing is his prog album, and that's a lot of people I know's favourite. So it's we're all prog heads basically. But this, it really isn't genre specific. There is some prog in here. There's not really any pop, but it's a whole mix of stuff. There's lots of electronica. This one is a double, and it's a CD length double. Now, I talked about bands looking at vinyl as the predominant format. Wilson doesn't. Vinyl is an add-on to him, and I'll come to that in a bit. It is very resplendent in orange, hence the orange t-shirt. As I said, it's a double. It starts off, I mean, there are 10 tracks spread across the 4 sides. And each track is represented by one of the squares on this sort of staircase graphic. And the first 3 are the openers, and they're very good. But it's sort of, they're almost like a lead-in. It's really when you get into side B that it really comes alive. Now, that's not to say side A is rough. I never, when I listen to the whole album, I never jump straight to B. I always listen to A first because it builds you in. When you get into side B, you've got, where are we? What is it called? Impossible Tightrope. It starts with, which is quite a long track and really comes in, and then comes to Rock Bottom, and Rock Bottom to me is the standout track. Now, it was actually written by his long-term collaborator Ninette Tayet, who also leads the vocals and the guitar on this one. So for a change, Wilson is actually playing the supporting role on that track, and it is magnificent. Ninette also is backing vocals and guitar on lots of other tracks, and she's got such a lovely voice. Really, really, really works with him. Side C, where are we? Side C, these 2 tracks are magnificent. It starts with Beautiful Scarecrow, which is a lovely song, and then goes into the title track, Harmony Codex. Again, I really like that, and that features a spoken word sort of narration by his wife, Rotem. And she sings. You can see in the middle here it says, did I dream of you, or are you dreaming of me? And it's sort of eerie. She sort of closes the narration with that question. Absolutely brilliant. And then you come to the last side, and you've got three tracks on here, and they start to draw the whole thing together. So first track on that side, which is called Time Is Running Out. It reminds me, it's not proggy at all, but there are just elements in it here and there which remind me a little bit of Porcupine Tree in style. Then it moves on to the penultimate track, which is called Actual Brutal Facts, and this one is really interesting. The vocal on that reminds me of early Massive Attack Tricky. So it's I don't think it's rap. I mean, some people might call it rap or hip hop, but it's more that sort of early 90s trip hop style vocal. And then it goes into the final track, which is called Staircase. And that is a proper finale. It's quite epic. It goes on for about 9 or 10 minutes, and really sort of encompasses everything which has gone before it. There's a part which builds to what I would describe as Vangelis style synths before going out on a reprise of Rotem's narration, of the Harmony Codex, which is sort of depicted here. Really, there's a list of who does what on here, and the inner sleeve has got some a lyric list on there. Now, I mentioned this before, but this is important because this is one of the reasons why it hits my number one, and that is, as good as the stereo mix and the vinyl is, in terms of production, Wilson is a master, so it's always going to be well produced. But the Blu-ray, the surround sound mix, is way better than the stereo mix, and it's probably not surprising because Wilson intended that his album should be listened to in Dolby Atmos as a full surround. So yes, he's produced a good stereo mix, but that's not really how he has written and mixed and produced the album to be listened to. Now, I've got a decent stereo with some bloody good floor-standing speakers, but my surround mix is basically a mid-range soundbar, and the usual soundbar and subwoofer, and I did buy a couple of little satellite speakers to go behind, but it's not hi-fi, it's not a proper hi-fi surround sound. But boy, it's still good enough to listen to this, and it just puts you in the middle of a complete musical experience, which is very, very different from the stereo. And my really good stereo speakers aren't up to maxing. I mean, just sitting in front and having a stereo hit me is not the same as sitting in the middle of this with the music going all round you. So it's my number one because it's a great album. But also it's a sign of the future. I think we're going to see more and more of this, where musicians, some will be producing it specifically for vinyl, but increasingly I think we'll see the Blu-ray format or the surround sound format as being the number one, and I should be looking at that going forward because. Wilson is one of the first to actually do that as the primary mix. Usually they're an afterthought and obviously aren't as good. But when mixed properly, it's an amazing experience. So that's my number one is Harmony Codex for 2023, and it's the magnificent Stephen Wilson. So. Thank you again for staying with me on this journey, and I wish you a really happy Christmas, holidays, season, New Year. I am going to be off now to my daughter and grandson, and my son is also coming there. We all live in entirely different parts of the country, 2 to 3 hour drive in different directions, so Charlotte is in the middle, and we'll be spending Christmas with her, and I'll be back before New Year. And I might, because there was a lot of albums which didn't make this list. If I'm with it at before the New Year, I might do a quick one, not to go through them all, but just to to show some of the ones which didn't quite make it, but on another day might well have done. So thanks for being with me again and watching this, and a very happy Christmas to you, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Cheers.